Hi, this is May Said Ali, and I'm the host of the G42 On Air podcast series. We are excited to be recording the G42 On Air from Mubadala Studio. G42 is a technology company, a global leader in AI and cloud computing, with the purpose of inventing a better every day. Each episode in this series will transport you into insightful market leading conversations about transformative technology to drive positive progress across industries and societies, all in less than 30 minutes. Today, we have a very special guest, Abhilash Tomy, former Indian Navy commander, accomplished solo sailor, and an advocate for ocean conservation. He is the first Indian to complete a solo non-stop circumnavigation of the globe while participating in the Golden Globe race. He also collaborated with the Bayanat for research on the state of the seas. In this episode, Abhilash will share his remarkable journey. Abhilash, it's so great having you at G42 on Air podcast. And I'm very excited for our conversation. How are you today?
Good. Happy to be here in UAE. It's been a long time. Very happy to be back.
Well, we're really happy to have you back. And honestly, this episode usually is 25 minutes, but I have like hundreds of questions for you. I'll try my best to emphasize on the very important ones, but in my head, just know there's a lot to ask because of the amazing adventure that you have been on. But starting with, I'd like to ask you, what inspired you to pursue sailing and embark on this journey?
Well, when I was young, I think about 7 years old, two things happened in my life which kind of, decided what I'll do when I grow up. One was a circumnavigation attempt by a group of army officers, which became a documentary, and I watched it on TV. And I said to myself, when I grow up, I'll do this. And the second thing was a pilot from my father's place crashed and died, a naval officer. And when I read about him and his death, I decided I'll become a naval pilot when I grow up. So two things, flying and sailing. If you want to do both of them, the only place where you can do that is in the Navy. And I joined the Navy.
Okay, so how old were you when you saw the documentary?
7, I think.
7 years old. So how could death inspire you to become a pilot? Like, how is that something inspiring in any way? It brings fear in the human being, right?
I can only tell you that it happened. I'll leave the explaining bit to others to figure out why.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go back a little bit in your journey also when you went into the race in 2018. Many people are aware and some are not, but you have been through a severe storm that left your boat completely damaged and severely injured. And I remember one of your interviews where you said you had to go through a lot of, you couldn't drink, you couldn't move, you couldn't do anything. The only thing is sleep, wake up, drink iced tea, vomit, then sleep. It was a very unique story. And that went on for almost 3 days and a half till the rescue came. So, Abhilash, seriously, like, what made you think to go back?
I think that's what anyone else would do. I don't.
No, trust me.
No, trust me.
Nobody else would do.
I've never met a person who's met with a bike accident and has not gone back to a bike again, or met with a car accident and has not gone back to driving again. Similarly, I think if anybody meets with a boat accident, he'll go back to sailing again. So I think it's there in people. That's how people are.
Yeah.
Just that, I just happen to be an example.
Actually, it changed my perception because when we think of the sea and sailing and you being on your own, we do not connect it to the car accident. We do not connect it to the bike accident or to any kind of accident. But now when you look at it and you make it sound very simple, it's still way more complicated being on your own for a couple of days. And it's the situation is much harsher, I would say, but depends on...
It was quite complicated. I'll tell you, my wife was pregnant at that time. This was my boat, which I bought with my money, and I knew that I was going to lose this boat. My bank account was in overdraft, minus so many thousands. My spine was broken. I wasn't sure if I'll be able to walk ever again. So it was technically, yes, it was quite a bad time. I thought I should cry. This is a good moment to cry.
I was about to ask you, did you cry?
No, I ended up laughing about it. And then I started, preparing for the next race. I started figuring out which boat to buy, what sort of a team to set up, and what sort of a sponsor to approach. So I was already building a future and trying to move towards that.
So basically, while you're injured, sitting there, not able to move or eat or do anything, waiting for the rescue, you were already planning.
Yes, and I also planned for the contingency, just in case I'm not able to walk again. What do? I thought I'll take part in the Paralympics.
Wow. Okay, and then you tell me this is how normal people think?
I think so.
I promise you, normal people do not think this way. This trauma will take a couple of years for therapy, and maybe you get out of it. So definitely, this is quite a very unique experience. What would you say this experience had a huge impact in the year that you went on the race? Like, how did you change your approach to the journey of racing?
Well, I'll say, to be honest, at that moment, I didn't feel that there was an impact. I saw it as one of the incidents that happened in my life. Like, let's say I joined the Navy, I became a pilot. So these are incidents in my life. I had an accident, so there was another incident. But how it changed my wife is that she said, you can go back to the race, but this time you need to have a proper sponsor and a proper team and a well-prepared boat. And that was very sound advice. And I approached the next race, in a very sequential, methodical
manner. So the
manner.
first race, you didn't have any sponsor with you? It was on your own?
Yes, basically. It was on my own. I put in, in India, you don't earn much. So I kind of was in a huge debt. The guy who built the boat, I owed him a lot of money. There were a lot of people who donated. So that's how I ran my campaign. And I took out all my life savings and put it into the boat. And I lost that boat. When I did this race in 2022, I thought that there was no trauma, but it was there. There were times when my jaws would tighten, my shoulders would, become very tight, thighs would become very tight, and there was tension in the body, which I couldn't recognize. But when I crossed that point where I had the accident, the entire body relaxed, and I felt as if there was one more person inside me, and that person has now left. It's like gone forever.
Wow. So I like the idea of how the strategy has changed, and thanks to your wife, where it went to a different level with the support, with the sponsorship, and I believe of Bayanat.
Yes.
And I'm sure that had a huge impact on the journey.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So, you could find a sponsor who's like made a contract, generous with money, but they will force you to tick off every point in the contract. Say, this is not my job, this is your job, this is not my job, you've not done this. Bayanat, I did have a contract with them, but I kind of impressed upon them that we don't have time and they needed to release money. They started releasing money even before we signed the agreement.
Wow, this is very unique. And the trust.
Yes, so it was not just generosity with money, but they're very large-hearted people. And no pressure. Hassan, who's the CEO, told me that if you cross the start line, that's victory enough. You don't have to do anything beyond that. And then later on, he said that if you cross the point where you had the accident, I think you've proven yourself. You don't have to do anything beyond that. So, I would do anything for a sponsor like this.
This kind of emotional support and spiritual support has maybe pushed you even further, right?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah. So whenever I was in trouble, whenever there were like, things breaking in the boat, I used to think about the people who supported me. And I was like, I will sail one more day because of them. I will say, I'll repair this particular problem just for these people who supported me.
So although you were being solo on your own, but this support system that you've had in your mind, in your heart, it stayed with you, right?
Yeah, so 2012-13, when I did the circumnavigation, I thought I did it. But when I finished it in 2023, I realized I'm only the face of it. There's a huge village that takes to send a man around the world alone. They are all forgotten. The glory comes to this face, and I'm that face. That's the honest fact of it.
Honestly, when we've had our conversation earlier, it's your humbleness that attracted me to the way you talk about people and the inspiring stories behind it. This conversation can go on and on forever because there's so much to ask you on the sailing journey around the world. But I'd like to ask you, what was the most memorable moment you have experienced during the solo voyage?
You won't believe it. It had nothing to do with the sea. It's something that happened on land.
Okay.
Right? Two things. 2018, I was doing the race. I get a message from the race organizers saying that I have to speak to my wife. And I have a satellite phone, but if I call my wife, I'm disqualified. But this message has come from the race organizer.
Sorry, 1 second. If you call your wife, You disqualify?
Yes.
Oh my goodness,
But
okay.
this message has come from the race organizers,
Okay.
right? So I'm in two minds. I'm sure that I won't get disqualified if I call my wife, but I was wondering why. There has to be something serious. Does she need my Facebook password?
Yeah, that's the most important serious thing.
The last time she asked for my Facebook password, I gave her my credit card. So I thought, okay, I don't remember her number. That's a good excuse. And the next message is, this is her number.
Uh-oh.
Well, so I picked up.
So 1 second. This is something that no wife would be. You don't even remember your wife's number? This is another conversation. We'll talk about it later.
I did remember what her number was, but I thought that's a good excuse, right?
Okay, all right, that makes sense. Yeah,
15,
NDC, hallucinating, you forgot the number. Okay.
Exactly. So I call her and she's like speaking to me in a very normal tone as if nothing's happened, there's no emergency. And for 5 minutes, I'm listening to her. I'm like, your tone sounds normal. Why did you, force the race organizers to make me call you?
Yeah.
She's like, you idiot, you didn't understand a single word of what I said. I was like, what are you trying to tell me now? I'm a bit hard of hearing, which is good for my marriage. So what have you been trying to tell me? She says, you're going to become a father. That's what I've been trying to tell you. I was like, you get this news and you got nobody to share it with. So I said, I'll call you back. I cut the call and I look around and there is some squid, 2 crabs and 1 flying fish. And I was like, whom do I speak about this to? And then I call her back and I asked her, do you want me to come back? She says, no, I've spoken to your mother. I've spoken to my friends. They'll take care of me. You continue and, finish the race. So that was a big moment for me. In 2022, when I was doing this race, I had no contact with my wife in the entire Atlantic. And I was worried if my son had started going to school, if my wife was comfortable. So these little things were really nagging me. When I entered Cape Town, when I was crossing the Cape Town gate, I had people from Bayanat fly down. They're sailing on a boat right next to me. And there is this gentleman who holds a iPad and makes
Oh my God, this is tech usually a podcast. I shouldn't be crying. So this is completely transformed to a different podcast. Okay.
Yeah. So he, puts me through a video call.
Yeah.
And I see my son in school, and that was his first day in school. And trust me, I mean,
wow.
It was something.
So what you're saying is that I was expecting an experience from the sea, some shark, was about to jump and eat your boat. And adventures, but then you tell me you go back to land, and this was the most memorable and important moment of your life.
I caught a shark and I put my hand around its mouth and I ripped it open and a lot of things happened.
That's what I want. Now you went back to the land, I had a different imagination. Honestly, it's quite inspiring, and it goes back to the whole concept of family, right? That's what matters most in life. So this was the journey, went on land. This was the most memorable thing, but I would go back to your skills. So we know very well when it comes to the Golden Globe race, it's very well known for this demanding conditions. Like you said, you need to be self-sufficient. You can't have to prepare for everything. And mostly what I think of is food. Like, how did you prepare for 63 days, right?
236.
236 days, food at the boat, in a very small boat, which is, how did you fit all that food in? And everything else, by the way. I'm sure there's so many other important things that you can cover.
Absolutely. So, when you start, you don't know if it's going to take 236 days or 286 days.
Or 311 days.
Exactly. So the first guy finished in 312 and I had somehow prepared for 300 days. So you have a calorie count, roughly 4,000 calories a day multiplied by 300 and you get something like 800,000 calories or something.
Okay.
Excuse my mathematics, but...
something around that range?
I mean, if you do the multiplication, you'll know the exact figure. And now you have to carry this food in different forms. A, something that you can cook and eat, which is rice, with say some packed meat and stuff like that. B, bad weather. You just open a packet of, let's say freeze-dried food, add hot water, leave it for 10 minutes and you can start eating.
How tasty was it?
It tastes like your vomit.
So you didn't have good food to taste?
No.
You had some good food?
I carried a lot of spices from India and I improvised.
Okay.
And finally, I had a lot of packets from Defense Food Research Laboratories. And that is like for really, really bad weather where you can't even put hot water into your food. So you just open it and eat it.
Yeah. We should do a movie soon, yeah? Like this should be a very successful movie on Netflix. So
I'm sure.
that's another thing.
Yeah.
This is
I've had a few offers from India, but it's mostly about dancing around trees.
okay. Not what we want.
No.
So other than food, what did you have to prepare? Like what was if you take me through the journey and I know it's a much longer conversation again, but if you give me the overall, what did you have to prepare yourself mentally, emotionally? What did you have to do?
Well, emotional preparation, I didn't need any because I wanted to do it. So, I was not being lonely, which is the negative side of being alone. I was going into solitude, which is the glory of being alone. So emotionally, I didn't really have to prepare much. But let's say somebody were forcing me into it, then it would be solitary confinement of almost a year with extreme hard labor. Other than that, skill-wise, I think you need to have the skills of a village. You need to be a carpenter, you need to be a meteorologist, oceanographer, communicator, media guy, doctor, dentist, cook, steward, a sailor also in between. And you can keep, carpenter, you can keep making a long list.
So you had to do all of that. And how many voices did you have in your head? Was it like us? Usually we have two voices, right? Or did you have many other voices talking to you?
It was just me. I did have a voice a few times. Like when I was entering Tasmania, I had to go in and cross a gate and come out. Right at the mouth of Tasmania, at the entry, I ran out of wind and I waited for 2 days. And since I was so close, I couldn't sleep. And one day, on the third day morning, I found winds, I would set up my sails, and I just fell asleep. And I had this voice, which was of my wife, whispering into my ear. And suddenly I just woke up because I realized I was hallucinating. I rushed out, and my boat was going full speed into a huge wall of rock. So I got saved by that voice.
Ooh, I'm telling you, this is beyond. And then you tell me this is a normal car accident. It's not. This experience is a complete different level for any human to understand, and you're on your own.
Yeah.
So imagine if this was not for this voice, you would have been straight into the rocks.
I would have split
That's
Tasmania
a memorable
in two.
Experience to talk about.
Yeah, I would have split Tasmania in two.
And there would be no memorable experience to talk about, actually.
Yeah.
All right. So you would say mentally you didn't have these kind of issues because you were equipped, you wanted to, and for the 236 days, you were okay with being on your own.
Absolutely.
100%.
Yes. Except for some time when I really missed speaking to my wife.
Yeah.
Because I just wanted a single sentence saying that everybody is fine, that they are well taken care of.
You couldn't receive these messages. At least it's they're okay, we're fine, nothing.
If I find a ship, I call the ship on VHF. If this guy responds, then I ask him for a favor and tell him, can you please send a message to my wife on WhatsApp? And that guy obliges, sends a message to my wife. My wife has to be up, reads a message, sends a reply. This guy receives the reply, and I have to be within range to receive that response.
So it's not even possible.
Very few times. Yeah.
This is the only mental pressure that you've had to make sure that everybody back at home is okay.
Yes.
This was the only issue, not the idea of you being on your own.
Yes, you don't stop being a father or a son or a husband when you're at sea.
Yeah.
So you can't really forget these roles that you play.
Beautifully said. If you want to talk about how did this whole experience shape you as a human being, what would you say?
It's changed me completely. It's put me in touch with my real self, I would say.
Yeah.
When you're on land, you're always interacting with the outside world, watching a TV, talking to somebody, giving responses. Even when you're driving and nothing seems to be happening, you're looking at a billboard which says, buy this. And in your head, you're like, I don't want it, or I want it, or I'll buy it, or you're making plans.
Something is happening 24/7. And if not, you create something to happen because you cannot be on your own.
Yes, and it's all happening outside you.
Yeah.
At sea, it gives you a very good opportunity to go into a journey inwards, and that really changes you. You see the world for what it is by staying away from it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm already imagining the universe is getting smaller and smaller, and you're going all the way out and just seeing the whole world from a different perspective and different direction.
And you see, what happens on land is so much of mass hallucination. People give meaning to things just by their imagination. For example, money. It doesn't really exist. It doesn't have a value of its own. But since 8 billion people believe in it,
Then it becomes
it gets
valuable.
value. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you think of writing a couple of books about your journey?
I've written 3 books already.
So you've already had the books, which I haven't read for them yet. You have to recommend which book we should read first.
None of
Which
them.
one? None of them? No. No, I'm sure one of them. We'll talk about it afterwards. I'm going to post it on my social media platforms for sure. What would you say when it comes to the sustainability world? First of all, I'd like to ask you, what changes in the last 10 years when you were going on this journey? So have you seen climate change? Have you seen anything that's happened to the sea? It's quite a decade.
Well, I'm no expert on climate change, but
Yeah.
I've seen things that are quite disturbing. A, the number of fish and marine life that I've seen has drastically come down. B, I've seen marine life at the wrong place. For example, I saw sargasso weed south of the equator and very far to the west this time. Too many cyclones in New Zealand when I was crossing that place. The high pressure and low pressure are far more stronger now. I got sunburnt at 40 degrees south, which is supposed to be a very cold place. I saw flying fish at 40 degrees south, and generally you don't see them beyond 23 degrees south because that's where the warm water ends. And a lot of things like this. It's disturbing.
And seeing it live, it's very disturbing, and not only like it's scary, right? For the whole global warming and the climate change and everything else.
Yes,
coming
I mean,
around it.
if we go on this track, I don't know where this is going to end.
Yeah. Well, which brings me to the next question is that basically during your journey, you have collected water samples from remote parts of 4 oceans, which is the Indian Ocean, South Pacific, North and South Atlantic. So, and I'm sure with Bayanat to aid studies on the presence of the microplastics and try to help improve our understanding of impact of the human's activities. You know, it's hard to say. It's just so sad of how much we're impacting this world in a different way, especially our sea, and how is the human activity is impacting the global marine environment. So, can you share with us a little bit more about this participation and what are you doing about it?
So this is one of the things that I thought about when I approached, Bayanat or any other sponsor. I told them that this is boats or humans don't generally sail through these areas, and it's a big opportunity to collect samples, and you can do whatever studies you want. And Bayanat saw value in that proposition, and they came up with a plan, and they said collect 10 milliliters of water every day at a particular time, and they can then study it for microplastics and correlate it with my position, and they get an idea of where the plastic is. In a way, this is my way of giving back to the society. Society has done so much for me, and I can help them in some way.
And did you get the results in that place?
I have preliminary results, and it's not good.
Not looking good.
Not looking good. We have microplastics in very remote corners. So it's like you do something at the coast. The impact is felt thousands of miles away because the currents carry it so far away.
And this is another educational, campaign we should be talking about in the future and continuously and non-stop for people. I'm sure you are and you have been.
Yes,
but there's so much to do.
Unless we become a plastic-eating kind of biological
I think
organism.
eventually we will if we keep on going in that direction.
Yeah.
Yeah. My last question for you, Abhilash, although I told you I have so much more, but you have time constraints. So what would you say the takeaway from this entire journey? If you want to summarize it in like one sentence, what would that be?
I've been alone for 450 days. And I really don't know how to summarize it in one sentence. But what comes to my mind is something I read in Toynbee's book called Study of History. And he says there's always a 10% creative minority in a society who expand the way humans experience things. So this minority gives leadership in certain aspects. And I hope that my voyages of being alone, going through so many remote areas, have helped or given some sort of guidance to people back in the society. I have a few examples, of course. There are people who've said that my return to the race has been an inspiration for them to come back from physical injuries or setbacks. That's one way. During COVID, I started writing about how to be alone and how to embrace it. I was putting these small tweets on Twitter, and then newspapers picked it up and they wanted me to write articles. And I give techniques to deal with this changed world where you're alone, no connect with the society. And even if it's helped one person, I'm happy.
Well said. I researched mostly before our interview this whole journey and the sea and the ways, but now I have so much more to do research on what you have spoken about, especially being alone, because now in our society we're not okay to stay alone. This is a great journey that you have shared with us. Thank you so much, Abhilash, for joining us on G42 on air, and I look forward for more adventures to hear from you in the next race, maybe that you would go. Are you planning to do, by the way, that or no?
My wife is already sending me off on another race.
Is she?
Yeah, so the thing is...
So this is ongoing.
Yeah, I believe this is the only time she knows where exactly I am and what I'm up to.
Oh, okay. That's not very good. Yeah, you're not used to that. Thank you once again, Abhilash.
Thank you.
And great having you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And that concludes our very special episode. We hope you enjoyed diving into Abhilash's remarkable exploration and the valuable collaboration with Bayanat in unraveling the mysteries of the seas. Thanks for listening to G42 on air. If you enjoy our show, please rate and review us on Apple Podcast and Spotify. And be sure to come back next time. Until then, this is May Sayed Ali signing off from Abu Dhabi.